Hey everyone, welcome back to Receipts Ready. This story completely floored me. I, 31F, just discovered that my best friend Sarah, 29F, has been running a fake charity for 2 years. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that people donated thinking they were helping sick kids. Money that went straight into her pocket. Let me back up because this whole thing is insane. Sarah and I have been best friends since college. She's always been the ambitious type, you know. About 3 years ago, she started talking about wanting to give back to the community. She said she wanted to start a charity for children with rare diseases. I thought it was amazing. Sarah had always been good with event planning, and she's super charismatic. When she told me about Hearts for Hope Foundation, I was so proud of her. She said she'd gotten her nonprofit status and everything. The first gala she threw was incredible. Beautiful venue, fancy auction items, people dressed to the nines. She raised like $60,000 that night. I helped her with decorations and guest lists. I was so happy to support her cause. But over the next 2 years, things started feeling off. Sarah was throwing these galas every few months, each one bigger than the last. She was raising serious money, like 6 figures per event. The weird part was, I never saw any actual charity work happening. When I'd ask Sarah about which families they'd helped or what hospitals they donated to, she'd get vague. She'd say things like, "Oh, we're working on several cases," or "the paperwork takes forever." Meanwhile, Sarah's lifestyle was changing dramatically. New designer clothes, expensive jewelry, a brand new BMW. When I asked about it, she said she'd gotten a promotion at her marketing job. I didn't think much of it at first. Then last month, something happened that made my blood run cold. So I was at Sarah's apartment helping her plan the next gala. She stepped out to take a call and left her laptop open. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I noticed she had multiple browser tabs open. One tab caught my eye. It was a bank statement. And the account name wasn't Sarah's personal account. It said Hearts for Hope Foundation. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in my gut told me to pay attention. The balance was insane. Over $300,000. But here's what made me sick. The recent transactions weren't donations to hospitals or families in need. They were transfers. To Sarah's personal account. Thousands and thousands of dollars at a time. My hands started shaking. I quickly took photos with my phone before Sarah came back. When she returned, I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking there had to be an explanation. Maybe she was reimbursing herself for expenses. Maybe there was some legitimate reason. So I decided to do some digging. I looked up Hearts for Hope Foundation online. The website looked professional with photos of sick kids and heartbreaking stories. But when I tried to find any record of their charitable work, I found nothing. I checked charity databases. I called a couple hospitals that Sarah claimed to work with. Nobody had ever heard of Hearts for Hope Foundation. That's when I realized what Sarah had been doing. She'd been throwing these elaborate fake charity events, getting people to donate massive amounts of money, and keeping every single penny. I felt physically sick. All those wealthy donors who thought they were helping dying children. All those auction items people paid premium prices for. It was all a scam. But I still needed more proof before I could do anything about it. And that's when I came up with a plan that would either clear Sarah's name or confirm my worst fears. So, I decided to test Sarah directly. I called her and told her my cousin's baby had just been diagnosed with a rare heart condition. I asked if Hearts for Hope could help with medical expenses. Sarah got really flustered. She started making excuses about how they don't do direct family assistance. She said they only work through hospitals and it's a whole complicated process. When I pressed for specifics, she got defensive and changed the subject. That confirmed it for me. If this was a real charity that had helped hundreds of families like she claimed, she would have been eager to help my family too. I needed to see those bank records again. So I volunteered to help with the upcoming gala. Sarah was thrilled because these events were huge productions and she always needed extra hands. The next time I was at her place, I waited for her to go to the bathroom. I quickly opened her laptop and found the banking tab she'd bookmarked. What I saw made me want to throw up. Over the past 2 years, Sarah had deposited almost $400,000 into the Hearts for Hope account. and she'd transferred almost all of it to her personal accounts. There were some expenses for venues and catering, but the vast majority went straight to her. I took screenshots of everything. Bank statements, transaction histories, everything. My hands were literally trembling as I did it. The worst part was seeing the deposit amounts. I recognized some of them because I remembered specific donations from the galas. Like the Johnson family who donated $20,000 because their own son had died of leukemia. Or the elderly couple who gave their entire inheritance of $50,000 because they had no kids and wanted to help sick children. Sarah had looked these people in the eye, listened to their heartbreaking stories, and taken their money knowing it would never help a single child. I was devastated. This wasn't just financial fraud. This was emotional manipulation of the worst kind. But I wasn't sure what to do with this information. Sarah was my best friend. Part of me wanted to confront her privately and give her a chance to make things right. That's when fate made the decision for me. So, the next week, I got a call that changed everything. It was Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd been to several of Sarah's galas. She was crying on the phone. She told me she'd been trying to reach Sarah for weeks. Her granddaughter had just been diagnosed with the same rare disease that Hearts for Hope supposedly helped with. She'd donated over $30,000 to the charity and now she needed their help. But Sarah had been avoiding her calls. When Mrs. Patterson finally reached her, Sarah told her that Hearts for Hope doesn't provide direct assistance and basically brushed her off. Mrs. Patterson was devastated. She kept saying she didn't understand why a charity wouldn't help the exact cause they fundraise for. She asked if I knew how to reach the other board members or directors. That's when I realized there were no other board members. Sarah was running this whole operation by herself. I couldn't let this sweet old woman suffer while Sarah bought designer handbags with her donation money. So I told Mrs. Patterson I was going to look into it and get back to her. I spent the next few days gathering more evidence. I found out Sarah had never actually registered Hearts for Hope as a legitimate nonprofit. She'd created fake paperwork and a professional website, but there was no official charity. I also discovered she'd been using stock photos of sick children on the website and in her promotional materials. These weren't even real cases. The whole thing was completely fabricated. Finally, I decided I had to confront her. But I wanted to do it smart. So I called Sarah and asked to meet for coffee. I told her I had some questions about Hearts for Hope because I was thinking of starting my own charity. When we met, I started asking her specific questions. I asked for the names of families they'd helped. I asked for their nonprofit registration number. I asked if I could speak to other board members. Sarah got more and more uncomfortable. She kept making excuses and saying she'd have to get back to me on the details. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken of her bank account. The look on her face was something I'll never forget. So, Sarah just stared at the phone screen for what felt like forever. Then she started crying and saying she never meant for it to get this big. She said it started as a small thing and just spiraled out of control. I told her that stealing $400,000 from people who trusted her wasn't something that just happens accidentally. She begged me not to report her. She promised she'd pay everyone back and shut down the charity. But I kept thinking about Mrs. Patterson and her sick granddaughter, and all the other people who'd given money thinking they were saving children's lives. I told Sarah she had 24 hours to turn herself in and figure out how to return the money. If she didn't, I was going to the police and to every person who'd donated. Sarah completely lost it. She started screaming at me in the coffee shop about how I was ruining her life. She said I was a terrible friend for spying on her. The whole thing was so ugly. I left and went straight home. That night, Sarah blew up my phone with calls and texts. First she was angry, then she was pleading, then back to angry. I didn't respond to any of it. The next morning, I called the police and filed a report. I'd turned over all the evidence I'd gathered. Then I started calling the major donors to let them know what had happened. Within hours, the whole thing exploded. The police arrested Sarah at her apartment. The local news picked up the story. People were furious and heartbroken. It turned out Sarah had spent most of the money and couldn't pay it back. Her fancy car got repossessed. She had to move back in with her parents. She's facing serious fraud charges and will probably go to prison. The saddest part is that some of the donors were people who really couldn't afford to give as much as they did. They sacrificed because they believed in the cause. Yeah, and a few of the larger donors are trying to start a real charity to actually help families with medical expenses. And Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter is getting treatment through a legitimate children's hospital foundation. I lost my best friend, but I know I did the right thing. Sarah betrayed everyone who trusted her, including me. Honestly, this one made me so angry. Taking advantage of people's generosity, especially when it comes to sick children, is just evil. I'm glad she got caught, and I hope those donors get some justice. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for being here.